Today I am going to go over some basic care of rhinoceros rat snakes. They also go by the common name Vietnamese long-nosed snake. I've gotten a lot of questions about my boy, so I'm going to go over some basic care. The top two questions that I get, aside from what is that, is where can I get one? And I can tell you some sources of where you can get one. I searched for weeks. I searched all kinds of different places, contacted a bunch of people, a lot of independent, small-time breeders, just little hobbyists like me, trying to actually find one myself. And I have a few names and emails stored away. So I can tell you the appropriate places to contact if you're looking for a hog-nosed snake. However, I am not going to share that information very easily. And the reason why I say that is because the number two question that I get is this a good beginner snake? And the answer is no. You certainly need to know some tips and tricks and really know what you're getting into and certain things to do, and have experience in order to keep a rhino rat snake. And I'm going to go over a lot of the reasons of why this makes it so difficult and share some of the tips and tricks with you on how to keep them. So stay tuned. First off, this is my current little tub. This is a new tub, by the way. I have a juvenile, and it doesn't look too big. It's about, I think this is like a 28 quart Sterilite high. I'm not sure. It's definitely Sterilite brand. And you actually, with rhino rat snakes, especially when they're very young, some sort of tub with the really strong clamps. I have these metal clamps on there. But tubs, when you have really young ones, are safer than using an aquarium. You don't want to start them off on anything big when they're babies or even juveniles. My boy here, you're going to see, he's almost a year old, and this tub is like the right size for him. But they're a very small snake. They're a very skinny, lean snake, so it is much easier for them to get out of their enclosure than it would be for some of the other popular starter snakes, such as your corn snakes and your ball pythons. They're also not nearly as durable and can go through some culture shock if you start too big. For a hatchling, for a young baby, a plastic shoebox would be fine, or a container, a little smaller than this with good snaps on the side and some clamps on the long ends would be just great. You could start off in a 5.5 gallon aquarium, but I just didn't trust it. This is way more secure, the lid with the clamps on it, than a 5.5 gallon aquarium is with a screen clamp to it, because they are very skinny snakes and they like to get into everything. It's that rat snake mentality. They're like toddlers. They want to be in everything all the time. So you might actually be able to see him. I don't know if you can or not. He's just got moved into this thing yesterday, so he's been really exploring. But I'm going to take him out here. You're going to see I'm going to go in very slow and really state my presence. And it's not that I don't trust my animal. It's that rhino rat snakes, as a species, as a whole, they're actually considered to be very nippy. They can be very timid snakes and be quick to bite when they're scared or startled. And especially the young ones are more so prone to that. And it's also feeding day. So I want to make sure that he knows it's me coming in after him. He is not getting food. It's not one of the cats or anything like that. So I'm just stating my presence. Making him aware of what's going on. And now I can pick him up. Come on. Can I pick you up? He really likes his plant, apparently, because he doesn't want to come off. Can I? Come on, look at your plant. It's nice, folks. folks on YouTube wanna see you, buddy. He's got a really good hold on that plant stem there. Oh, and now we're gonna go in there. I knew this was gonna be some minor problems with this box. He's just got so much stuff to climb on now. That's kind of crazy. The reason why he has so much stuff is because these snakes are semi-arboreal. That means that they spend a good amount of time, up in the bushes climbing around. They don't spend as much time down on the ground as you would expect, a corn snake or something of that nature to do. So he's got all this climbing stuff. I definitely wanted to make sure I fitted him with the appropriate kind of things to climb on and whatnot, and give him lots of space. Lots and lots of space and everything. And of course now my box is going to be pain in the buns. So apparently that plant is staying there now. You'll see he's going to climb this entire way through the video. So this is my boy that I currently have. He's about 11 months old, so he's almost a year old. He's starting his color phase. And what I mean by that is when rhino rat snakes are born, they're actually this pale gray or like silvery gray kind of color. Sometimes they're more of like a brown, like a leather brown sort of color. And then they can have some brown and white flecking, black and white flecking throughout them, I'm sorry. And as they age, they actually turn into a fully green snake. Some of them do keep some of that black or that white into adulthood, and generally the more of that black and white kind of flecking that they have as a baby, the greater the chance they're going to maintain some of that into adulthood. So he is about, like I said, a year old, and you can see he's starting to do his color phase. He's looking very green on the top. These guys get anywhere from a fresh cut grass bright green to a nice like deep emerald green. You also have a small chance of getting ones that turn a teal color or turquoise kind of color. It's not very common. You will see females that when they're producing eggs, they will actually turn that teal color during the breeding season, because the production of eggs apparently saps out yellow pigment from their body, making them look more blue than green. You see this phenomenon with green tree pythons. Now, in my boy's case, he is actually one of the rare cases. You're not going to be able to see it on the camera, maybe on his belly a bit, but where he had all his white flecking, he's actually getting some nice blue in. It's like a bright blue coming in between the scales where the white flecking used to be. You can see his belly's kind of a steel bluey gray kind of color maybe. So he's going to be green with this blue markings in between the scales, which is, as far as I'm aware of, is actually considered one of the most sought after naturally occurring color variants of them. So I got lucky because when they're born, when they're young, like I said, they're a silver gray or a brown color. They're showing no hint at what shade of green are they going to be. Are they going to have any of that blue? He was about 5 to 8 months old when I started noticing little hints of that blue color in him. And these are very expensive snakes. I mean, if you're a fan of ball pythons, it's not going to seem too expensive. But for the average person's wallet, they're pricey. So you definitely want to be fully aware of what you're getting yourself into, and make sure you know all the tips and tricks, and you have the time and effort that it takes to put into these guys. A baby, so one younger than this, that's still in that silver phase, that hasn't started getting the green wash in them yet. A baby like that is going to run you anywhere from $300 to $450 before shipping. And like always, males are cheaper than the females. And then, you know, the older they are, the pricier they get. And then especially too, with the older they are, yeah, you might have a bit of an idea of what kind of color face that they're going to go into. Which means if you're looking for a teal one or one like him with the blue, guess what? The moment that blue started coming in, his price tag would have skyrocketed. He would have been worth more than his siblings that weren't showing any kind of blue. So you're going to be paying more at that point as well. I have seen pairs that have been close to breeding age of Rhino rat snakes sell for over $1,500 and sell really fast in a matter of days of being posted. So if you want to get into breeding them, it's very expensive. And while I'm on the note of breeding, I'm going to bring this up too. Sorry, we're going over all this before any kind of care here. But on a note of breeding, you're thinking, oh my God, if I can make like $300 a baby, wow. You know, even if you're counting the cost of the heating and you know, the cages to keep them in and all the food you're going to be feeding them, you're thinking, oh man, we make some money. Not necessarily. Because since they are a rare colubrid, not many people, A, know what they are, B, are going to know how to take care of them, so they're not going to want to spend that kind of money on them. And, well, I guess there isn't really a C. Most people don't know what they are, and if they know what they are and they're fully versed on how to take care of them, they may go with something else. They're not popular animal. They're not something that a lot of people are buying. I mean, if somebody's going to put $400 in an animal, usually they're going for your boa or your ball pythons or something like that, not one of these. They are, you know, not many people breed them because not a lot of people want them. It's diehard fans that want these. And like I said, if you're a diehard fan, you know what it is, you know how to take care of them, you're going to do some considerable looking around and sending emails in order to get your hands on one. It's just not profitable for people to breed them every year that do have a pair. So don't think of getting into these guys as far as breeding thinking you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to be, you know, having some babies and trying to sell them for quite a while. Alright, so now that I got the basis out of the way, we're going to actually talk about the care, the care and origins of this animal. I'm going to start off with the origin. Rhino rat snakes are native to Vietnam and China. That means they like things pretty warm and pretty humid. As far as your heating goes, you want to keep them in your hot side in the mid to high 80s to your low to mid 90s. I'd say more low 90s than high 90s in all honesty. So, you know, your high 80s to your low 90s, I'd say, is the best range as far as your hot side goes. And then your warm side, you want to be no cooler than 75 degrees. Honestly, you know, 78, 79 is a much better target as far as that goes, but definitely no cooler than 75 degrees on the cold end of things. So heating, it's not that difficult. You know, hook them up to a thermostat, or you have an appropriately, you know, strength heating mat. You're pretty good to go with these guys. I use a heat mat. I'm pretty sure if you had a nice little, you know, hot lamp, that you'd see one of these guys sitting under the hot lamp basking with its head all stretched out, you know, enjoying that. My boy is very active. He does come out when the sunlight hits his tank and is crawling around, and will sit a little bit and kind of just sunbathe in the natural sunlight. So I'm sure if you did a heating lamp with one of these guys, they would gladly just bask out in the open under a heat lamp for you. They do make wonderful display snakes for that reason, and because they are overall so active and don't get big. Since I mentioned size, size-wise, you're looking anywhere from 4 to about 6 feet, with your with your females being the largest. My boy has just hit about 2 feet now. Yay, he's a hero. So I'm hoping he's at least a 4-footer, in all honesty. But that's what you're looking at size. So you're not talking anything big. We're talking, since they are arboreal, a 20-gallon long, 20-gallon, yeah, I definitely say long, not high, a 20-gallon long for them, like you would your standard corn snake. Though bigger is better. Once they're older, the more room you give them, the more active they will be. Now, back to some of this other stuff. Humidity. As I mentioned, they like things very humid. This is the part in their general overall care that makes keeping them tricky and definitely not good for the beginner. They need it humid, but they are also very susceptible to bacterial infections, which means they are very susceptible to if your humidity is too low or too high. It causes problems. They're very touchy about that. For your overall humidity, you're looking at a range of 65% to 80% humidity. And you can either spray down their cage, twice a day or so, maybe once in the morning, once in the evening, whatever you need to keep your humidity right for your particular setup. And then, you do want to let it to dry out and get down into that lower humidity range throughout the day. You don't want to keep it, too damp all the time, or it's going to cause respiratory infections. You can use a misting system. I would suggest if you use a misting system to keep them at, a steady humidity, do make your target humidity on the lower side of the range. So target 65-70% humidity all the time if you're using a misting system to keep it at that constant rate. If you're misting them down, you just want to get it up into that, 80s, maybe even 90%, and then just kind of let the humidity come down throughout the day before you mist it again. You'll notice his cage, though, there's no condensation. There's no condensation in his cage, and you probably noticed his bedding looks awfully dry there when I was playing in it. And that's because it is. I do not mist him down. I use a completely different method, which I'm going to cover right now. I keep him on a completely dry substrate that is good for holding moisture. So your cork bark or eco earth, your cypress mulch, and moss would all be very good choices. It's very capable and very good at holding humidity, but I do not mist it down. So I keep him on a completely dry substrate, and then under his little trusty bird skull here, this here is a container with a hole in it, and I have damp moss in it. And you'll see there is lots of condensation on that lid and around the edge of the tub. So I use a humid hide. It's called a humid hide. So I keep on a dry substrate with a humid hide and then a very large water pool. You want a water pool big enough for them to be able to submerge their entire body in, and a humid hide that you make sure stays very damp all the time for them and make sure they can fit their entire body in there. And what this does is it gives the snake himself the opportunity to control how much moisture is he breathing in, how much humidity is he breathing in, and how much moisture does he have against his scales and his skin at any given time. It allows him to self-regulate the amount of humidity he's getting, just the way that having your hot side and cool side allows the snake to self-regulate what temperature they're at. And for a lot of snakes, this is a perfectly acceptable method to do this if they need humidity. Now, something that needs constant, really, really high humidity all the time may not work so well, but for a lot of snakes, this method is going to work. I use this method because it was suggested to me by a breeder in the United Kingdom. They found that this method with the dry substrate, the big soaking bowl, and the humid hide, when they did that, they actually had less occurrences of respiratory infection and skin blisters than if they were misting down their rhino rat snakes' cages every day. And on a note that when I bought him, this little guy here, he actually had a water blister on him. We weren't sure that's what it was at the time, but he had a water blister on him. I actually got him at a discounted price because of that abnormality. He had an ailment or was an imperfect specimen, so to speak. So I saved some money on him, but I had him after 2 weeks of having him in this kind of setup with the, not misting it down on the dry substrate with the large soaking bowl and the humid hide. He shed out in 2 weeks and the blister went away. We've had no problems with water blisters since. So since he had that, the breeder probably more than likely kept him in a tub, like a little plastic shoebox, with paper towels that he misted down every day, and it just happened to be too much humidity against the skin all the time and caused, you know, water blisters. It caused bacterial infection there under the skin, and it healed up and went away on its own once he had the proper conditions. So to me, I find that as proof, you know, as just another proof in my own experience that I've witnessed that this setup works and is very beneficial to rhino rat snakes. You know, over the misting them every day or using a mister system or keeping them damp. He's in a plastic tub which holds a lot of humidity actually. Because keep in mind, as this water is evaporating, it's creating air humidity. So it's not like he's got a desert environment in here, even though I'm never spraying him down. He's got more of a temperate. You know, he's got air humidity, it's just no condensation. I have lots of holes in my lid so that, you know, plenty of that evaporation can escape, but the plastic's still going to trap quite a bit in there, more so than a screen top lid would. When he goes to a screen top cage, when he's an adult, I may actually mist his bedding ever so lightly once a week, just because more of the evaporation from his water pool is going to be escaping through the screen top lid than through something like this that has plenty of places in between the holes to trap some humidity in here. So that's a note. You really got to know. Like I said, they're really touchy. I just went over a lot of tips and tricks on there and how I did things. And as I mentioned, I don't even do things the way most people would think to keep these. And I learned this trick, this tip of keeping them like this by doing tons and tons of research and talking to lots of people that have kept them and bred them and raised them. It's a lot of work. You really got to know the signs and symptoms of skin bacterial infections and the signs and symptoms of respiratory infections, and know ways to immediately treat it. Know what caused it, what in your care, in your setup could have caused it, and how to immediately remedy the situation. Otherwise, they will get sick, they will die. If you can't keep that humidity right and you can't take cues from the snake's health and behavior to, you know, those cues to adjust your setup. So you got to have some experience. This is a moderate to advanced level experienced species. So if you come asking me where can I find one, I'm going to ask you some questions. And I'm going to ask questions that weren't in this video, so be prepared. I definitely want to make sure that if you're getting one and I'm helping you find one, that, you know, it's going to be going to a good home, because they're very amazing. They're rare. You don't see them in collections a lot, so it would be quite a shame for something to happen, and quite a shame for, you know, one of you to lose a couple of $100 because you weren't, you know, experienced enough for what you were doing. So definitely need to know some tips and some tricks, and like I mentioned, and really do a lot of research, and, you know, definitely know signs and symptoms of a lot of basic illnesses that you learn throughout times, and know, like I said, different ways of correcting it. Two things that I'm going to point out as far as humidity cues, that your humidity is too high or you're breeding too much bacteria. If you have condensation all the time on the lid of your cage or the sides of your cage, you have too much freaking humidity. Okay, condensation on the humid hide is good. It's a humid hide. It's one little area of the cage that's humid. It's supposed to be very humid. It's supposed to be the highest spot of humidity. But if your entire cage is like that and you didn't just, you know, mist it down with a mister or a misting system, you have too much humidity. You want to take this tank out. You want to put in, you know, wipe it down, wipe off that condensation, let it air out a little bit, maybe even put in fresh dry bedding. You have too much humidity, and if you leave it like that, they're going to get a respiratory infection very fast. So you want to immediately, if you see condensation that's hanging around for an extended period of time, you need to nip that in the bud right away. Another thing is, they spend a lot of time in their water dish. They love to soak. They love to bathe in their water. Hence why you want, part of the reason why you want a really big bowl, oversized water dish for them, big enough for them to soak in. That means that they poop in their water dish an awful lot. You want to have good vigilance checking for poop in the water bowl. Excuse me. And you want to immediately dump out that water if they swale it. So if they poop in it, they pee in it. If they get some, part of their shed stuck in it, you immediately want to take the bowl out, dump it out, rinse it out real good, and give them fresh water, because that's a really good place there to have a lot of bacteria hanging, and then it's up against their skin all the time, and you're just asking for them to get some problems, some skin blisters and whatnot. So that's very important. You definitely need some vigilance with these guys. You gotta know what you're looking for and what you can do if you find something. Now, another thing that makes them a tricky snake for a beginner is their feeding habits. In the wild, they eat rodents, birds, and fish. My understanding from what I've learned with him and from talking to the breeders is that when they hatch out of that egg, they are most predispositioned towards eating live fish. And that's how he was and most of his siblings. That's all they wanted when they hatched out, was live fish. If you're feeding live fish, you need to change and clean your water bowl more frequently. I think that should go without saying. But, alright, so fish eater probably sounds great. You're probably going like, oh my god, I have a garter snake. My friend a garter snake, yeah, it was a breeze. No problem at all. I can just breed my own guppies. They breed like wildfire and feed them to them. I tried that. I tried that, folks. It takes a lot of space. Just a lot of space, a lot of cords, a lot of electricity to breed your own feeder fish. And they're a little slow growing once you get them going. I had a lot of instances of moms eating babies and moms killing each other and moms killing dad because they were, bitchy wives in labor. And it took a lot of diligence, trying to move the pregnant moms close to giving birth into nets, trying to separate them out from the other fish to try and prevent as many of the babies from being eaten by the other fish as possible. And it was a lot of work, and it never got anywhere. So, you decided, okay, well, it still doesn't sound bad. I'll just go down to the pet store and buy some fish. It gets very expensive. It's worse than buying crickets. Because don't feed them goldfish. You shouldn't feed any fish eater goldfish, especially if it's a staple. Maybe here and there as a treat food, if you got a turtle or something, but definitely not as a staple diet. It's a junk food. It's reptile candy. It has no nutritional value pretty much whatsoever. It's lots of fat, and they're mostly scale and tails, which they can't digest anyway. They just poop it out. Don't feed them goldfish. That's the cheapest feeder fish you can get. The next cheapest is your minnows, your rosy reds, your shiners, all kinds of like bait fish. They're bad. They're bad. They're bad, 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 bad. And that's because they contain an enzyme called thymidase. And the thymidase breaks down thiamine, and it's going to prevent the absorption of, I believe it's vitamin B12, and actually I think it inhibits the snake's ability to absorb into their body some other vital nutrients and vitamins. So over years, over the time, if you keep feeding them fish full of that thymidase, you are depriving them of a lot of nutrition. And if you got a rapidly growing youngster, it's going to cause bone problems, the lack of, muscle mobility. It's going to cause, the inability to control their nervous system, and it's going to cause problems and deformities extremely fast because they're growing really, really fast, and they need all those nutrients. So you're going to have to spend extra money to get thymidase-free fish, such as your playkits.